Many people think of the Riverwalk in downtown San Antonio when they think about the San Antonio River. But the San Antonio River offers much, much more. There's a lot to be done to ensure it stays healthy, but through scientific research and good stewardship, we can keep our waterways clean and sustainable for everyone and its aquatic residents. You might be surprised to find that from the river's headwaters in San Antonio to its mouth in the San Antonio Bay at the Gulf of Mexico is a 240-mile journey. Natural springs, surface runoff from the rainfall, and recycled water supply fresh water to the San Antonio River. These waters are the foundation for the vital natural resources that thousands of species need as part of a complicated and fragile ecosystem, including aquatic insects, migratory birds, and fish. Where the river and the bay meet is a unique area called an estuary. A healthy estuary's rich plant life and slower-moving waters can help trap the river's nutrients while filtering sediments and pollutants. The estuary's natural ecosystem service helps to create an environment with clearer and cleaner water for the life in the estuary to thrive. The estuary has a mix of fresh water from the river and salty water from the ocean. The saltier the water is, the higher its salinity. The salinity in the bay fluctuates with rainy seasons upriver, providing more fresh water into the bay, and with dry summer seasons depleting freshwater resources. The organisms are used to and depend on these fluctuations in salinity to create an ideal environment for nursing habitats for young sea life, including young fish and blue crab. Many larger animals, such as the endangered whooping crane, forage for and consume these organisms, playing a major role in keeping the food web and ecosystem balanced. At over 5 feet tall, this unique bird was nearly extinct, with drastic conservation efforts increased their numbers from 16 to nearly 300 in 2015. With such positive results in whooping crane conservation efforts, it is important that scientists and citizens understand how to continue supporting the population's recovery. The whooping crane, along with the flora and fauna in the estuary's ecosystem, are facing a host of stressors that change their ecosystem faster than they can adapt, as well as expose them to chemicals that alter their health and the food web balance. Roads and buildings are replacing important habitat resources and pollutants from the land, such as fertilizers, pesticides, car oil, pet waste, and litter, often wash into the San Antonio River during a rain event and travel all the way to the bay, impacting plants and animals along the way. Building hard, impervious surfaces allow more of those pollutants to get into the river, rather than being absorbed and filtered by the soils and plants. Sustained drought conditions reduce the amount of water into the river, and without the appropriate seasonal freshwater inflow into the bay, the salinity becomes too high. Wild organisms, like the blue crab, which is the whooping crane's primary food source, depend on seasonal fluctuations of salinity. Many organisms might have trouble adapting to and living in persistent high salinity conditions. This environmental change could unravel a balanced food web and negatively impact organisms in the bay. With so many natural and human-caused changes around the river and bay, the San Antonio River Authority's scientists and partners are teaming up to search for clues from both past and present that will help us understand what keeps the ecosystem in a healthy balance, and what can disrupt it in the future. These aquatic biologists are investigating what happens to fish populations in the San Antonio River after a rain event. But first, they have to catch the fish. Biologists use an electric current to safely and temporarily stun the fish before gently scooping them up with a net. They can then categorize the fish and collect data.
So the species is Cyprinidae, that's a minnow, and again Cyprinella lutrensis, the red shiner. Again, more of a generalist species, not something that we typically are looking for out here in the riffle complex, but again, important to the study.
If the scientists observe a change in what kind of species they find before and after a rain event, it can explain how runoff water and the amount of pollution it may carry into the river from the land could impact the entire food web, all the way to the bay. Scientists do not necessarily have to be in the river to predict future outcomes in the San Antonio Bay. Scientists can use computers to model and predict what might happen with the plant and animal population when certain extreme environmental conditions occur using the Ecological Dynamic Simulation Model, or EDIS. This computer program can take and layer the data we currently have on plant and animal communities, their environmental tolerances, and population locations, in combination with environmental conditions such as salinity, temperature, and tide. Then scientists can model what might happen when environmental conditions become extreme, such as sustained high salinity or sustained high or low tide.
Well, SARA is using the EDIS program because it has some very unique capabilities. It is able to model this very dynamic region in the marsh, essentially the area along the edges of the bay that alternately dries out and gets flooded from tidal interactions, and it also has the ability to simulate how vegetation responds to those different factors like submergence or salinity increases. So it's through the use of the EDIS model that brings together all of these complex factors that go and try to simulate the health of the bay ecosystem as a whole, and not just focus in on one of these, one of the factors.
This EDIS model might explain what would happen to some of the whooping crane food sources over time. Food that is needed by the cranes to gain energy for the 3,000-mile journey to their summer breeding grounds in Canada. However, it helps to delve into the past to understand how organisms in the bay respond to known events and determine if these may be good indicators of environmental conditions. Rangia clams may have unique characteristics that can give researchers insight into the health of the estuary and bay. To test their hypotheses, scientists must first locate these Rangia clams. By using scanning sonar in the water, scientists can detect areas of the Rangia clam populations. The sonar uses the same method that dolphins and submarines use. The sonar device emits a sound toward the bottom of the bay. It then bounces back in a different pattern, which is then analyzed by scientists. Rangia clam populations, or clam beds, look different than other objects in the water. Scientists will then take these Rangia clams back to the lab and determine if these little creatures can be used to unlock some mysteries in the bay's environmental history. In the lab, scientists prepare the Rangia clam specimen through proper labeling and categorization. Scientists preserve them in a special coating that prevents them from breaking and carefully dissects them to expose the inside layers of their shells. Much like scientists measuring tree rings in a tree trunk, scientists can measure the width of these clam shell layers to compare past and present findings between environmental conditions, such as temperature, and determine if these layers are useful indicators in understanding the effects of bay conditions on an ecosystem. A small width might mean high temperatures, or maybe lack of nutrients or high pollution, making the Rangia clam an important window on how healthy bay ecosystems are maintained. While SARA scientists are using the scientific method to determine the needs of the San Antonio River and the San Antonio Bay's ecosystems, it is important for people living in the San Antonio River's watershed, from San Antonio all the way to the bay, to do their part by keeping the land and waterways clean. Because clean land means clean water for everyone. With scientific research and good stewardship, we can manage the needs of the aquatic residents while also using its resources for food production and recreation. Understanding how to preserve these ecosystems and their natural services they provide will ensure that there is a positive future for everyone.